Hello, how are you? Hola, ¿cómo estás? Konnichiwa, and however you say how are you doing in that language. I'm Pete with the Crypto Savages, and today we are going to discuss the blockchain. But I'm going to try to discuss it in a way that will make it so that anybody can understand. So if you're looking for a video that's very in depth about the blockchain, this isn't for you, but fear not. I have plans in the future for videos that will go more in depth for you crypto tech savvy savages out there. Cheers to you bad bitches. But today, we're focusing on the lovely mortals out there. So let's get into it. What exactly is the blockchain? Well, in simplest terms, the blockchain is a means of storing data. Uh, but what sets it apart is the way that data is stored. So I know you're thinking, what are the differences? Well, I'm going to tell you. For starters, it's decentralized. And no, I don't mean that it's out of touch with its feelings. What I mean by decentralized is that the data is not stored in a central entity. Instead, it's distributed among a network. This network is known as a distributed network, believe it or not, meaning that each individual on the network is provided with an exact copy of the data that's stored in the blockchain database. And this is helpful to prevent a central point of vulnerability. These central points, they leave nasty little hackers' mouths watering while they are constantly trying different means of penetrating this central entity. But I mean, I can relate to that a little bit, if you know what I mean. But, anyways, think of the recent breaches. They were central databases that were compromised because these left the hackers with sensitive information about people that were stored in the database, like social security numbers and whatnot. But these central entities are like candy stores for hackers. So yeah, I'll take three social security numbers and two credit card numbers, please. Appreciate you. So when the data is spread among a network, it prevents one central location from being attacked and brought to its knees. On a blockchain network, if one node in the network is brought down, there are many other nodes carrying on for its digital brethren. Also, the data is stored in a way that if something is removed from the database, the individual fingerprint, and I'm saying fingerprint because that's not actually what it's known as, but for this simple description, we'll know it as fingerprint. But if something is changed in the database, the individual fingerprint of the block will also change. And this doesn't seem like a crazy cool feature, but listen to this. All blocks reference the block that was stored before it. So if one block's fingerprint changes, the blocks on the network that were all blocks after or before will have to change as well, which in theory would require the whole blockchain to be mutated. And I know what you're thinking, why wouldn't the hacker just create a new block at the end and the blockchain would just continue from there? So this is protected by what's known as a consensus-based network. So everyone on the blockchain network has to come to a consensus to create a block. A block can't just be created by anybody. So a hacker couldn't just create a block and put it in the blockchain. Before that happened, he'd have to notify everyone on the network that this block is the next block, but there's a way for them to check it. And again, we'll get to that later, but for now, let's just know that it's really difficult to hack the blockchain. It's a very secure piece of technology. So this is cool that the network is decentralized, but what really does that accomplish, right? It doesn't mean anything if you don't have any example of how you would use it or why you would use it. So there's a lot of ways that it can be utilized, but for starters, as everyone knows, it can be created as a peer or utilized as a peer-to-peer form of currency that has no centralized entity that can fail, which would make the currency useless. For instance, governments back currencies, but there are governments out there that have failed, and that currency is no longer worth really much of anything. You see those pictures of stacks of cash that is just useless. It's a brick. But Bitcoin is the first cryptocurrency but it's the first application that ever utilized the blockchain technology. Blockchain was introduced with Bitcoin, and you can, when you think about Bitcoin, just don't think of it as an entity because it's not a central entity. Bitcoin is only alive because of the network that it runs on. The only way for Bitcoin to fail would be for the network to fail. It's, if you think about it in the context that of an email is only useful if you have internet, whereas Bitcoin is only useful if you have the blockchain that it runs on. So Bitcoin allows for peer-to-peer transactions of money because of the blockchain. Since every transaction that has ever been made on the blockchain is stored in public, it can confirm how much currency is in someone's wallet before a transfer is made, or even just to show your balance in your wallet. Anyone can view the information inside an individual's address. It's all public. It's peer to peer, and it's beautiful. But cryptocurrency, even though it's the what you hear most about the blockchain, it's not the, in my opinion, the biggest influence that is going to change the future. For me, I'm going to touch on this subject, but I'm going to make a video that's just for the subject. Just keep that in mind. For me, it's going to be smart contracts, and for most people, obviously, it's not just me. I'm not like a future teller of the crypto sphere. Most people believe that smart contracts are the future. And what are smart contracts? Smart contracts is simply logic that's submitted with this transaction to make sure that certain criteria is met before the transaction is carried out. So this has a crazy amount of uses. Let's think of one. Say you want to buy a house. Well, if the deed to that house is created into or turned into a digital asset, you can make transactions peer-to-peer without having to go through a third-party individual. The smart contract for the house could ensure that the house is actually property of a certain individual by checking records and checking public records and seeing if the individual actually owns the house. And then it can also ensure that the buyer has the means to buy the house. And only after that will it allow the transaction to go through. It's not hard to see how this is revolutionary and how it's going to influence the movement of assets in the future. It could automate jobs, which would save companies money, or it can just take the companies out of the equation and create autonomous companies. And that will give power back to people without having to rely on big corporations to form your trust and let you down like they have for many, many, many decades. But anyways, this video is way longer than I intended it to be. Again, I'm gonna have videos in the future going more in depth, so look out for those. If this video was helpful, please give a thumbs up, and if you like what you see, subscribe. If you have any topic that you want to hear about in the future, or you want something clarified, hopefully I can make it a little simpler like I did this. Just leave in the comments, and I hope that you guys have a good night. Salute.